It's just taken for granted in Canada that the City of Toronto votes for the Liberal Party of Canada. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, in the past three election cycles, can just assume that 25 seats in Toronto are going to go his way, same with Montreal, and that he can focus on different parts of the country for toss up ridings to win to try and cobble together some form of a government. Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, even remarked last year, if people in Toronto are wondering how the country keeps getting worse every single year under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's leadership, they should maybe reevaluate how they actually choose to vote in these federal elections. And maybe he's rubbed off on them a little bit, or maybe it's just that people don't like Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at all these days. It doesn't matter how progressive you are living in the city of Toronto. Eventually, you actually need to eat food and pay rent. And the Justin Trudeau Liberals' high spending and taxes aren't helping you do that whatsoever. And now it looks like out of the 25, it might be 26 ridings now after redistributions were made, there's a significant portion of these ridings that are either going to go to the Conservative Party of Canada, or they are big toss ups between the Liberals, NDP, and the Conservatives, or they're going towards the NDP, which in the Conservatives' book is a good thing. It's better to weaken the Liberals and pass it off to Jagmeet Singh's incompetent party. Although, in a certain sense, I don't really believe the NDP are going to pull out any of these ridings. They're such a broke party. Their get out the vote efforts are going to be abysmally terrible. But I want to go through some of the ridings now for you here today. Obviously, I'm not going to go through all 25 ridings. Many of these ridings are still solidly liberal, but the fact that any of them are going conservative should be keeping Justin Trudeau up at night. So I'm going to start off here. We have Toronto St. Paul. Toronto St. Paul is actually the riding. There is a by-election coming up in June, or I believe early July. The current projections from 338, and these projections are based off how the riding voted last time, fundraising, as well as current polling projections. So a lot this could be wrong, but it's generally accurate to the way that they know that people have voted in the past. And if anything, I think that a lot of these ridings are going to more significantly favor the Conservatives when you add in the fact that a lot of Liberal voters in Toronto are going to know in the next election Trudeau has no chance of being reelected. So a lot of them are probably either going to stay home or maybe vote Green or NDP if they're super progressives and they just want to vote their conscience or something like that, knowing that the Liberals can't actually form government. But when we see Toronto St. Paul, this is a riding where easily this was a 100% chance for the Liberals to win in 2021, 2019, and 2015. Now we are seeing there's an 18% shot the Conservatives could pick this riding up. And if the Conservatives fight hard enough in this by election, maybe they don't want to spend too much money, so they won't push it too much right now. They could pick up this seat. Another seat, we have Spadina Harbourfront. This is the riding that is currently being held by independent MP Kevin Vaughn, elected as a Liberal but kicked out over a fake sexual assault scandal, mostly because the Liberals know that Justin Trudeau is a touchy guy, so they wanted to throw Kevin under the bus for something he didn't do in order to sort of protect Justin Trudeau. Even this riding, which, mind you, I believe in 2021, there was like 15% of people, maybe 20% of people who voted Conservative in this riding. They now project the Conservatives could get 29% of the vote and are in a three-way split race between the NDP, themselves, and the Liberals. Another riding, this is University Rosedale. This is still solidly Liberal, but I just wanted to point this one out because if you know, this is Chrystia Freeland's riding, our current finance minister and deputy prime minister. She is projected to potentially only get 37% of the vote, the NDP getting 29, and the Conservatives 24, giving her only a confidence ratio of 94%. I don't think that she can lose because if there's a chance she could lose, she'll rip in volunteers from all over the city to protect her and throw other ridings to the dogs. But the fact that she is in a position where an incumbent minister is in that bad of a place is hilarious to me, especially Chrystia Freeland, one of the most celebrated figures in the Liberal Party, someone who shouldn't be celebrated, but is regardless. Here's a conservative one that's a likely conservative gain, York Centre. This is Yara Sachs's riding, the lady who went to go shake a terrorist hand in the West Bank not too long ago. At the same time, she, as a Jewish woman herself, wouldn't even walk a Jewish boy to school after there was an incident of other kids throwing rocks at him for being Jewish. The independent MP for the riding of Spadina Harbourfront, I think it's still called Spadina Fort York right now, Kevin Vaughn actually showed up because she wouldn't show up. I hope that actually the Conservative Party invites Kevin Vaughn into caucus. He really has earned it fighting back against carbon taxes, MAID, terrorism, anti-Semitism, all that other crazy stuff that the Liberals have decided not to care about whatsoever. Now we have this riding, Toronto Danforth. Toronto Danforth is now a three-way split riding where any party could potentially win. And yes, they are saying that the Conservatives are only at 25%, but added in the fact that there's going to be an inevitability feeling with the Conservative Party, there's going to be a lot of people bandwagoning over. This is a riding, again, that was a 100% chance of the Liberals winning in the last election. They scuffed this riding hard because of all the foreign interference that took place, with Han Dong obviously probably being a front for the CCP government in China, pushing forward plans to not release the two Michaels just because it would help the Liberals, or to release them at a specific time in order to help the Liberals in the election. That hurt them badly, and just because Toronto voters are progressive doesn't mean that they are literally in favor of the CCP government. Especially Chinese voters are very much not in favor of the CCP, and now that the interference has been exposed, it's very unlikely that the CCP is going to be able to manipulate and intimidate Chinese Canadians into voting for the Liberal Party, because their games are exposed and it's going to be very easy to report them next time. Here's this riding, Don Valley North. This is actually Han Dong's riding, but I was talking before just about the general issues that have happened in Danforth. Oh, I messed that up. Danforth. Ugh, I'm so sorry, guys. Don Valley North is the Han Dong riding. Danforth North was the riding that had the terrorist attack happen in it. That riding shifting for different reasons. But we have Don Valley North, and this is because of Han Dong. It is now a 43% chance that the Conservatives could pick up this riding. I think it's probably better than that, because I severely doubt that the NDP is only going to be able to pull off 10% in this area. Then we have Willowdale, another current Liberal seat. All the seats are current Liberals, where they are showing a likely CPC gain, 43% Conservatives to 38% Liberal. And then we have Don Valley West here with the Conservatives. This is where I was confused, because I knew that I had two Don Valley West ridings I was going to highlight here, and then I read Danforth wrong. I'm sorry, I'm not Torontonian, so I don't remember this stuff. But we have Don Valley West, which is only leaning Liberal, with them projecting it as 47% Liberal to 39% Conservative, 11% chance for the Conservatives to pick that up. Enough door knocking, enough spending on advertising, and enough visits by Pierre Poilievre could easily gird up that riding and make it a far better chance to win. Then we have Etobicoke Centre. That's just a runaway victory for the Conservatives with an 81% chance of picking up this riding. That is kind of the Doug Ford that's kind of like a big Doug Ford, Rob Ford area. It has a history of voting Conservative in the past provincially, so I could see this being an easy pickup for Pierre Poilievre, even though Doug Ford himself is fairly liberal these days, but it demonstrates that people are willing to vote blue in these regions. And then we have Etobicoke Lakeshore, which is actually closer to city center, but it still has a 75% chance of going for the Conservative Party of Canada, 42 to 38. And again, a lot of these ridings, I don't believe that the NDP is only going to grab 14%. There is going to be a bit of people jumping to safety from the Liberals and voting NDP because the Liberals can't win. So why not at least vote for the more purist Progressive Party? That's the funny thing. The Liberals can lose progressive votes to Jagmeet Singh. Doesn't matter how incompetent the man is. The problem for Jagmeet Singh is that his party is the more progressive party. So if Justin Trudeau is going down in flames, you might have progressives symbolically vote NDP, or people who are like hyper pro-Palestine, i.e. Hamas, might end up going and voting for the NDP or the Greens, depending on the district they're in, hurting the Liberals with 3 to 4% of their base in these ridings that they desperately need to show up for them. And it's not just Toronto. Here is some of the ridings out in the Brampton area. Brampton is having a couple of ridings leaning Conservative at the moment and a few toss-ups. This is an area that all the ridings were safe seats back in 21. Here's Mississauga. Actually, a majority of the ridings in Mississauga are leaning towards the Liberals, with Mississauga Lakeshore actually being a Conservative likely seat, despite it being currently held by a Liberal. This is the death of the Liberal Party. The fact that you're even having to talk about defending the Peel region and the city of Toronto hard means that they're not going to have the money available to go out in southwestern Ontario, to go out into more rural, suburban Ontario ridings to try and fight for those. They're not going to be able to dominate in Manitoba, certain Manitoba ridings the way they have in the past. They're going to have to just stick to Winnipeg, and even Winnipeg's kind of divided up with the NDP these days. It's hard to define what a good Liberal stronghold is. Toronto technically is still a stronghold. They might get 18 out of the 25 seats, but Again, if you're Justin Trudeau, you need 100% of those seats. Same thing in Montreal. Yes, they will basically sweep all of Montreal, but the fact they could lose Anthony Housefather's ridings and another one, a terrible situation for them. You can't lose a single riding in those areas. That's why the Maritimes is going to be a slaughter for the Liberals. They could lose potentially 100% of the seats in certain maritime provinces, despite the Maritimes voting 100% Liberal in terms of seat count in the 2015 election. And they held on to it for the most part in 2019 and 21. And now the Conservatives could sweep the vast majority of the seats in the Maritimes. Again, these are areas where the Liberals used to take them for granted because they needed to run the score up to get at least over 100 seats, 125 seats in these safe areas. And then they could kind of cobble together like a seat here in Calgary, seat here in Edmonton, a few seats here around Vancouver, one in Vancouver Island. They kind of like piece it together. They need a couple territories. That's how the Liberals used to win in the past. Now that they're even having to think about spending more time in Toronto means that the party is on life support. There's no way for them to come back, and they know it. They had some fundraisers recently, and it's not like yesterday, but it was a few months ago in Vancouver, in Toronto, where it was empty rooms for Justin Trudeau. It was like a couple hundred people, not even a couple hundred, I think it was like 70 people at a Vancouver fundraiser. That's a big city for the Liberals for the most part. They had Toronto fundraisers, 150 people showing up in a ballroom that could have had 1,000 if it wanted. People don't have confidence in Trudeau. His donors don't have confidence. There's no way he can cheat. There's no foreign interference he can pull off. He couldn't, even if he granted every permanent resident in Canada full citizenship, any permanent resident before Election Day was given full citizenship and allowed to vote, wouldn't go to his favor. Indian Canadians, who are a large portion of permanent residents, don't like the Liberals at all. Look at the polling for the provincial Conservatives in British Columbia, and they're cleaning up with Indian voters over the United Party, which used to be the Liberals, and the NDP. Same thing is happening across the country in favor of the federal Conservatives, because a lot of these demographic groups, a lot of immigrant groups, are heavily represented in small business ownership and other trades. They don't like the anti-small business Liberals or the NDP. They're going Conservative. Doesn't matter if you are the one who granted them the permanent residency and the citizenship in the first place. Even they need to be able to actually put food on the table. So they're not going to be like have someone jangle keys in their face and say, well, we brought you into the country technically. That's insulting to them. And when I go around campaigning in my own riding, again, shameless plug, I'm Wyatt Claypool running for the federal Conservative Party nomination, Calgary Signal Hill. Permanent residents, people who only arrived in the country a year ago, will tell me immigration's too high. The idea that they were brought into the country is not going to be something persuasive for getting them to continue voting for the carbon tax and other stuff like that. They will vote Conservative. Union members are voting Conservative. Middle class people are voting Conservative. Conservatives are dominating with both men and women. There's not a way for the Liberals to piece together a new coalition in time because there's no demographics left for them to add to their coalition. They're literally losing every single religious minority. There's not a minority of religious minority that they do well with. I think they're even losing with atheists and agnostic voters. So that you're done. Justin Trudeau cannot win. Huh. Anyways, that should be it for me today, guys. If you want to donate to my legal fund, it's the Give, Send, Go link in the description of this video below. We're being sued by a Chinese billionaire for no particular reason. After 2.5 years of this case going on since December of 2021, he still hasn't actually given any evidence over as to how he defamed him. He just simply says it. And we're having to fight this out in court because he just keeps throwing more paperwork at us to try and make us incur costs. It cost me personally more than $29,000, and I don't even count a small amounts of outside money that I've gotten from other people as well. So if you can donate anything to that, really helps me out. And if you happen to live in the riding of Calgary Signal Hill, vote for me number 1 on your ballot. Vote for Michael Kim number 2. We want the most conservative people representing these conservative ridings, not simply party guys looking for a new seat to fill after they lost their provincial election. Anyways, that's it for me today. Have a good one.